Hello and welcome to the Geeks Review. I'm Royce.
I'm Matt.
I'm Holly.
And I'm Aaron.
On today's show, we're going to take a look at some overlooked entries in the Disney catalogue, direct-to-video sequels and spin-offs. From The Return of Jafar to Cinderella 3 and beyond, we'll discuss our favourites, the oddities and more. But before we do that, we'd like to take a moment or two to remember and discuss the actor Chadwick Boseman, who passed away on August 28th of colon cancer aged 43. Across his career, he played many varied roles, most notably several African-American historical figures from the 20th century, like the first black Major League Baseball player Jackie Robinson in the movie 42, the singer James Brown in the movie Get On Up, and the black lawyer Thurgood Marshall. He also starred in and produced the thriller 21 Bridges, but is most recognisable for his role as King T'Challa, the Black Panther from the Avengers, making his debut in 2016's Captain America Civil War, starring alongside Robert Downey Jr., Chris Evans, Paul Rudd and Scarlett Johansson. For many, Boseman's Black Panther stole the show, and went on to star in his own solo movie in 2018, as well as Avengers Infinity War and Avengers Endgame.
Well, something I'd like to acknowledge the fact that now that we know how long, because I think from what I know, his condition was pretty hush-hush.
Yeah.
Like, not a lot of people knew about it, but from what we now know, most of his recent work, he was
Sick.
really, really unwell.
Yeah.
Like, throughout all of Infinity War and Endgame, he had cancer.
Yeah.
And he was battling, and I think it ended up being stage 4 colon cancer. And
It was, yeah.
to look back at those films and to realise that he did all of that and he didn't complain, and all of the tributes from his cast members say that he was just so positive throughout the whole thing. The work that he did on them,
Yeah.
the fact that he still did that despite suffering greatly and still had a smile on his face and enjoyed every moment of it, it just speaks volumes about what kind of character he had.
Agreed.
Yeah.
He knew what kind of a role model and an important figure. No, well, I'm sure he didn't have that much of an ego, but the fact that he carried himself like that and did the things he did, all the while struggling with his own internal battles, but inspiring a generation of people. It's just incredible.
I think you guys have pretty much covered it. I don't know what else I can really say. It's just that, like, I only knew him as an actor through the Marvel movies. And I kind of wished that I'd known him previously, but, you know, that's just what happens every time a celebrity passes away. It's just like we've missed this opportunity to actually get to know a person sometimes.
And it just goes to show that we as white people, we need to be ingesting more cinema from other cultures and, like, really important historical figures that he played. Like, I mean, I'm a big James Brown fan. I love all of his work that he did in his lifetime. And to know that I missed out on someone so incredible playing such an amazing character, it makes me think that we need to digest more African-American culture and more movies from those people.
Or from any culture.
Yeah.
I did have a chance to watch that. It's not available on any streaming service, so you have to get it legally, DVDs. But he is fantastic in that. He's got a few films on Netflix as well, particularly Marshall, and 42 is also playing on Foxtel. His James Brown performance is just, you look at it and it's like, that's James Brown. He did all of his dancing, he did most of his singing, and it's a fairly standard biopic, you know. It's got the same tropes. I mean, if you've gone and seen Walk Hard, the Dewey Cox story, which basically breaks down what those are really like, the musical biopics. But yeah, he's fantastic in it. And I found myself thinking this, and a lot of other people did too, and I got a bit angry at myself for thinking, what's going to happen now with Black Panther? Because I got angry at myself thinking, it's just a movie. It's just a silly comic book movie. But at the same time, it was so important to so many people, you know, this role, for people who looked like that to see themselves represented on the big screen. And yeah, it does raise a question, what's going to happen next?
Well, there's nothing stopping them continuing with his sister.
Yeah, Shuri, I think that was going to be the next step anyway, once they churned out a few movies with him. And I think, looking back on it, I don't know, I can't speak for Disney or I can't speak for Marvel or anyone who was involved in the films, but they must have known. There was a contractual obligation there to know his illness and what he was going through.
Yeah.
And so I'm assuming they probably did have contingency plans in place, so it'll be interesting to see how they play out now.
I think it'd be fine if they just said, "Oh, he's still alive. It's just you never see him anymore. Just he's off screen. He's being the king, and Shuri or someone else takes up the mantle."
But they should definitely they should address him not being there without.
Yeah.
You know, they can't just be like, "Oh, gloss over the fact that he's gone. Here, have a new one." Like that's not going to be how it will work.
Hopefully, not do a Tarkin and bring him back through CGI or something.
No.
Yeah.
Let's not think about that.
No. I'd like to also say, you know, you can never really know what someone is going through, and get yourself checked. You know, do the poo test for colon cancer, and indeed any other sort of test you can.
And if your doctor doesn't let you, get it done anyway.
Yeah. Agreed.
Just because we're young doesn't mean that we won't have issues. He was 42.
Yeah, 43. Yeah.
43, sorry.
Which is... But gosh, anyway, on to the topic of today, which is Disney sequels.
Yes.
On a lighter note.
Yes.
Yeah.
So Disney sequels, you know, direct-to-DVD spin-offs and all that, began with The Return of Jafar, which was Aladdin 2 back in
Actually,
the early 90s.
it didn't.
Oh, really?
The first Disney sequel was actually The Rescuers Down Under.
Yes.
Right.
Which is a film.
Is it?
So The Rescuers, the original one, has anyone in here seen it?
No, I've missed it.
Not fully. I know The Rescuers Down Under better than The Rescuers.
The Rescuers, I think, in our generation is most infamous for a particular frame of the film containing a particular dirty image that one of the animators thought would be really funny to put in a window.
I mean, it's a blink and you'll miss it moment.
But it's now become the most iconic part of that film and the one that our generation knows.
Yeah.
I have to look it up. I haven't seen this.
It actually got so bad that people would burn out their VCRs trying to look for this particular frame. And so people would destroy this particular section because they'd keep reversing back because people are perverts. So they'd keep reversing back to look at this particular frame.
Welcome to the digital age now, though.
Yeah. So you don't have to worry about it now. I think they removed it in subsequent releases, but when it was first released, it was the most thrilling thing.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Can I see?
Boobs.
Oh, okay.
I wasn't sure how much I could say on this podcast, but yes, no, boobs.
I think it's
People
just
have
like
boobs.
a topless chick.
It's a topless woman in a window,
Yeah.
and they're going, it's like a weird cart thing, and then they go past the
Aren't
window
they
and
on
she's
the-
just there like this.
Aren't they flying on the seagull?
Yes, they are. They're on the seagull, and it just,
Tiny
it's blink
day.
and you'll miss it, but it's what our generation knows it for.
It's just really funny.
I did not know about that.
Yeah, no, fun. The Rescuers Down Under, however, is the first real spin-off that we got.
But was that in cinema or was that direct-to-video?
That was direct-to-video.
Right.
What year?
That was 1990.
Okay.
So the
So
Right.
that did predate
Yeah.
Return of Jafar by quite a few years.
Yeah, so 1994 was Return of Jafar, but a lot of people forget about Rescuers.
Yeah, because I knew of The Rescuers Down Under, but yeah. So yeah, Return of Jafar was not the first big one.
No.
No. But yeah, it was kind of a risky gamble based upon what I've read. You know, it was sort of like, do we do this?
Yeah.
You know, and it was going to be apparently a pilot for a TV show.
Yes, no, there was the Aladdin TV show. They'd really started churning out a lot of those TV shows. We had Hercules later, and we had Little
Yeah.
Mermaid TV show, and
Oh, so many.
the failed Atlantis one, which we'll get to in a little bit. But The Rescuers Down Under was a film. It was fine.
It was a film.
It wasn't good, but it was fine. But Return of Jafar, their biggest issue was that they didn't have Robin Williams returning. And that's where they kind of tripped them up because...
As the genie.
Yeah. So he didn't return and they had to replace him.
He came back for the...
For the
the
next
third
one,
one,
which
didn't he?
was a shame. Because he should have been there for Return of Jafar if he was going to be there for any of them. But, yeah, Dan... I
Dan
Castellaneta.
Castellaneta, yeah.
I can never pronounce his last name.
Homer Simpson.
Yeah, Homer Simpson. He replaced him, and he does a pretty good impression.
He does sound a lot like Homer, though.
Yeah, yes.
You know.
But for
I
having
him so much.
to jump in for Robin Williams
Oh, yeah.
is a huge task, especially since all of the promo for the original film was based around it being Robin Williams.
Much to his chagrin.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, it's
Yeah.
basically why he's not in this one. Because
Yeah.
he was so angry at them using his celebrity.
But in terms of Return to Jafar, my favourite thing about this is finally Iago, get something decent. Iago is my favourite Disney character.
Played
Oh, wow.
by Gilbert Gottfried.
Yes,
The
Gilbert
parrot.
Gottfried, the man himself, with the most shrill voice of any man.
The most shrill voice you have ever heard.
God.
I'm going to do the rest of the review in this voice.
No, you are not.
Yes, I am.
I will run over there and
Don't
kill
do
you.
that.
No. But, yeah, Iago finally gets his time in the spotlight. The first song of the whole film is him singing, which, I mean, Gilbert Gottfried singing? Anybody else opinion? Anyone else?
I
have
mean,
opinion on
his
this?
voice is so iconic. I don't think people care as much anymore. It's like he's a character actor
Yes.
purely because of his voice, and the fact that that is his voice, you know, he's not even really putting it on.
I mean, I have heard
insane.
interviews of him doing a less intense version. It's
Oh
very
yeah,
weird.
like he just ups the level of his voice, but it is his voice.
I thought his singing was brilliant.
Please
God.
God, no.
Your voice is not holding out today. The other really good thing about Aladdin, and this was my gripe with the first one, there was no villain song other than the Prince Ali reprise at the end, which was great, but I know that the voice actor who plays Jafar can do a lot more than that. And they actually had a deleted scene with one of my favourite shows in... one of my favourite songs in the whole show, which is Why Me? And that was later adapted for the stage. And it's a duet between Jafar and Iago. And it's their big villain song about, like, why does Jafar have to be relegated to this position? And, like, he should be better. And it's very comical. But they removed it for more runtime with Aladdin, which, I mean, I get it. Because he's the protagonist. That's kind of the point.
Yeah.
But then in Return of Jafar, you get You're Only Second Rate, which is Jafar's big number where he's a genie and he's putting poor genie through all of this crap. And I think it's just a fantastic example of when parts of these sequels are done right. Like, they go back and they look at them and they go, oh, this is what we needed in the first one, let's shove it in the second one.
The animation was pretty good as well. I mean, it's not the cleanest. It's obviously done on a budget, but I remember being really impressed by the horse animation at the beginning, just like seeing them run over the dunes. And it's not just like, oh, horse runs over dune. It's like horse struggles up the sand dune. And the characters heave off their horses and they move with a weight. It's like, wow, okay, there's actual effort put into this. That's impressive.
You can see the weight and the push and pull in the animation. You can tell that they really care about the project, which is not what they do in the next one. They kind of go... I've seen a lot of people go, oh, the animation in Return of Jafar is awful. And I'm like, have you seen the next one?
Yeah, but they're comparing it to the first movie,
Yes.
which is, you
Yeah.
know, a full-length feature cinema release film with a bigger budget. And I never understood animation budgets
No.
until recently. It just confuses me. It's like, why don't they just draw better?
You don't realise what goes into it until
Exactly,
you're
you
actually
don't
there.
think about it.
Yeah.
Speaking of animation, can I jump ship to Pocahontas 2, The New World?
Yes.
So
Oh,
I have issues with the Pocahontas franchise in general. I don't mean to come off as a white knight, but the historical cultural revisionism is a bit cringe.
Yep.
Like they created this like Pocahontas, who was a young Native American girl who really suffered at the hands of, you know, older white settlers, and so did her countrymen. Like, obviously they got slaughtered, and that's a whole thing we'll not get into. But in the first Pocahontas movie, they have this thing where it's like there was animosity on both sides. Like, there's this really cool song, Savages, where the white men and the Native Americans are singing about it. You're like, oh, they must be savages. And it's like, oh, well, we just all need to get along. But that's not at all what happened.
It's funny because that song just highlights the Indians are right.
Yeah.
The Native Americans are right, but they're sitting there being like, they're just as bad as each other. It's like, no!
And
No.
then they, towards the end of the film, they shove all the colonialism and racism into this Governor Ratcliffe character.
yeah, the one guy.
And then they're like, oh, heck, no, let's not be racist. And then they throw him onto a boat, and he goes back to England. It's like, we fixed it. We defeated racism.
Is he the see how I glitter?
You've been
Yes.
watching Lindsay Ellis.
Yes.
The same. He actually, fun fact about Pocahontas, he voices his right hand man as well.
Right.
So he and Wiggins have the same voice actor. So he plays off himself most of the time. And Wiggins is someone who, speaking about the sequel, I wish would have reappeared in the sequel because he was such a funny character, and I would have liked to see him and Percy the dog, the pug, the little annoying.
Oh, that
shit pug.
little thing.
I would have liked to see them reconcile in this, and that would have made the whole thing a little bit better. But
and another issue I have with Pocahontas, as I mentioned before, how she was a child.
Yes.
She's very sexy in the films, and she has her own agency, and she falls in love with the white dude, and she wants to be with him, and it's just
they made her canonically she is 18 in Pocahontas.
Nice.
But
All
in
that
the story, she's like, what, 15?
Younger.
She was like 14, I
Oh,
think.
good lord.
and then they have her in this, like, that she's it's just such a white man's fetishization of a Native American woman. So in the second one, obviously it was direct to video, so animation budget was down, but they were also experimenting with CGI models. So like there's these shots of the boats on the water that I like the idea, like these shots that go around the boat when they're on the water, but it looks like the PS1. It's it's so bad. And obviously the artists weren't paid as much to put as much detail in, but the characters they transplant from the first film, so your Pocahontas, your Ratcliffe, and
he's back.
And your Mel Gibson character.
That's played by his brother.
Yeah, that's funny.
Really?
Yeah, it's a real Toy Story mood.
Yeah.
Yes.
When they get those three characters in, you can tell they were traced from the original film, and they look slightly crummier. Like, I'm no animation expert, but if you watch the film, you can see they look like sad copies of their original selves.
Yeah.
And then all the new characters, like, the detail is so much less. They look like Looney Tunes. Like, there's, it's really, like, disconcerting. Like, the king looks stupid. Like, you have Ratcliffe there, and obviously he's exaggerated because he's huge and round and
He's
big
the
neck.
villain.
Big neck and stuff. But
Absolute
then,
unit.
like, he's got detail on him. And then the king is just, like, skinny neck, big eyes, and a beard so I don't have to see his chin. Kind of thing, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But an A+ for John Rolfe. I'm putting it out there right now. If John Rolfe, who is the new love interest in this film, there's a whole plot line, spoiler alert, there's two Johns now.
Oh dear.
Fun.
Yeah,
because
which white John do I like?
Which white John will I fall in love with now? But John Rolfe, if he was in any other movie, would be a fantastic character. Because he's witty, he's funny, he doesn't take himself too seriously. He's a little bit pompous, he's from noble background, but he shows a real warmth towards Pocahontas that actually builds through the whole film. He is a great, well-rounded character, but he's in Pocahontas too.
But that is really nice, that story, how... Okay, we're just
Spoiler
going total spoilers, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Go for
so-
it. I mean, these are old films.
The whole, for most of the film, you think that John Smith, the Mel Gibson character from the first one, who was her love interest, you think he's in London and he's dead.
The first scene is like him being chased by the Royal Guard because they
Yeah.
believe Ratcliffe over him.
And so when Pocahontas is escorted by John Rolfe to England to meet with the king, everyone's like, John Smith is dead. How does that make you feel, Pocahontas? And she's like, oh, no. But she's, like, falling in love with John Rolfe. And then, like, she's really... And when, like, there's a scene where he teaches her how to dance and be a lady, and they're, like, getting closer. And it's not too bad, actually. It's quite natural. And then...
Surprise!
John Smith's not dead. And so, like, there's the two of them. There's actually, like, there's a little bit of, like, animosity between them, but not much. They mostly get on really well.
But you start seeing John Smith's ego,
And
which you
toward,
don't get to see in the first film.
at the end of the film, when once again they lock up Ratcliffe and defeat racism.
That's it, boys. We cured racism.
We did it. At the end of the film, John Smith's like, Pocahontas, finally, I'll get my own ship and we can go around, we can be together and explore like we always wanted to. And she's like, oh, I actually don't want that anymore. I want the new guy. And it's actually...
John's just like, okay,
Yeah,
I'm
and
happy for you.
he just accepts it.
Oh,
It's
okay.
really cool for a 1990s Disney movie that was a sequel to a white fetishization of Native Americans,
So
for
something-
her to have her own agency and actually just be able to choose, and for him to be okay with it.
For something not so progressive, it was pretty progressive.
Yeah.
She was just like, hey, I want to be with him. And he went, okay, I hope that you're happy. This makes me sad, and I've waited for you for like a year, but I'm happy for you.
Well, funnily enough, like in the story that it's based off, the historical background, she does just leave him for another guy.
John Rolfe.
John Rolfe. Well, yeah, like they
Yeah.
actually like
This is voiced
the
by
character.
Billy Zane.
Yes.
Good lord.
Nice.
Yes, but
Yeah.
no. The voice acting of Donald Gibson, he does a really good job, and so does Billy Zane. They do a really, really good job in that film. Yeah.
But like and continuing the theme of historical revisionism, you don't see much of the population of London. But when you do, there's this like 7-minute song of Pocahontas arriving in London, and she's looking around like, oh wow, look, wow, and like all the poor people are really happy. it's just like, these.
But a shout out to the new character they added, Ute. I think he's like, they have a running gag of not being able to say his name.
Yeah.
Ute, a 7 or 8 foot tall Indian man who is basically her bodyguard, who is all the ladies in London are obsessed with him.
And he doesn't
And that's
speak.
a running gag. And he doesn't speak, but there's a scene where they all clamber towards him, and you just see this slow grin spread across his face. And it's just moments like that I'm like, if this was anything other than Pocahontas 2, it
The
would
New
be
World.
a great film.
Some like the writers and animators do put in some cheeky little funny moments in
Yes.
their shit films.
Yes.
So I was just going to say it was Brad Garrett who voiced Ute
Oh, yes.
Krang himself, who we discussed a few weeks
Krang?
ago. Yes.
Bless.
Robert Barone.
New Krang.
Yes.
Oh, cool.
Oh, yeah, him.
Deep Krang. Atlantis, the original film, is very underrated. I know that Aaron and I have the very same feelings about this. It's a great film, great characters.
Great style.
Doesn't dehumanize their female character, which is nice. Because even though she's, dressed skimpy, it's not because she's a skimpy character. It's just because she literally is the princess of an underwater world. You know?
And like no one really wears anything in
No,
Atlantis
I
anyway.
mean, they're stuck in a submarine
And a
for most of it.
giant. Oh yeah.
Yeah. But yeah, the second film, everyone was very excited about because it was like, Atlantis 1 was great. Let's get a second Atlantis. There's so much they could do. The writing is garbage, so that's off to a bad start. Mm-hmm. The animation is worse than Aladdin King of Thieves.
Oh dear.
Which was bad. Really, really bad. Actually, they're probably about the same quality. The animation's terrible, the music is terrible, the voice actors are not the same voice actors.
Well,
What a
they
shocker.
got James Arnold Taylor to
Yeah.
play Milo.
Yeah.
So like he does an okay job, but it's like
No. It's basically probably one of the worst spin-offs in this entire list.
Yeah, I think I gave up watching it after only a few minutes.
Yeah.
When I did try to watch it.
Yeah,
I was
and
like,
the story isn't cohesive. It's meant to be like, these ones are meant to be like cohesive episodes, right? No. They were like, let's do like 4 different pilot episodes and then smash them together and see what happens.
that's a
And
trend.
it's like,
hey?
oh, okay, that's a train wreck and a half. But yeah, no, I think that's all of the ones that were mesh ones.
I'd just like to briefly mention the sort of many years later returning to the original story and sort of seeing the next generation pick up the mantle in regards to The Little Mermaid 2, as well as the Return to Neverland, was
Yeah.
it, with Peter Pan? Where you went and had the children of the...
Neverland had a cinema release.
All right.
Yeah.
I
did.
saw that in the cinema.
Right, okay, so we can
I think
discount
Little
that.
Mermaid 2 may have as well.
That was, yeah. Okay, disregard that.
Little Mermaid 3, Footloose with music. Only good thing about that is we saw how her mum died. Just putting it out there.
Oh, love that.
there's great
really
things.
needed that, yeah.
And before we wrap up, I just want to give a quick shout out to Cinderella 3: A Twist in Time.
Yes.
Because Cinderella 2, Only good thing about that film was Anastasia finally finding the love of her life.
That's the ugly stepsister, is it?
Yep.
Yep.
She finds the love of her life in the humble baker in the village.
Yep.
And they're very happy together. And she
Wholesome.
found her Prince Charming. Mama was not happy, but she was, so it didn't matter. Twist in time. I'm going to give it the absolute best praise I can give a film by saying that they made the most boring character in Disney history into someone with a personality.
Who's this?
Prince Charming.
Really?
Yes.
Right. Is this the one where he's like a himbo and he's just...
Yeah, so you'll have to watch the film. It's a fantastic film, but there's a specific scene which basically sums up what they've done with his whole character in this film. First film, he was just there. I don't even remember his personality.
He was there.
He was there. He was there as a tool to make Cinderella look better, basically. This film, there's a scene where he's on the stairs and he wants to go look for Cinderella. They've like reversed time and stuff. It's all a weird plot line, but it's cool. And his dad's lecturing him and he's on the stairs and he goes, "You are not allowed to take one more step down these stairs." And he dead ass just looks straight forward and goes, "Okay," and jumps out the window. Like, in this castle, on this grand staircase, goes, "Okay," and just yeets himself out of the window. And face first, just dives. And it's so funny. It's just like, these are moments that you're like, why wasn't this in the original film? That's why that film, to me, is one of the best spin-offs ever. Because it just gives him so much personality. And I would never have thought of Prince Charming, this boring man, standing there looking dead into his father's eyes as his father's like, "You are not allowed to take one more step down these stairs." Okay, crash. Straight through the window.
definitely got to check that out.
Would recommend watching it.
It's on
very,
Disney
very
Plus?
It should be.
Most of these
so.
are.
Yeah, most of these are on Disney Plus. Have a look at you can probably actually search all of them. There's a massive list of them, and a lot of them are actually pretty okay. For things that come direct to DVD, there's a lot of other really bad things out there that are sequels. You're right.
Yeah, my stomach just grumbling.
But yeah, like, there's a lot of really bad sequels for other things, so I would recommend watching quite a few of these, because they're pretty good.
Thank you for listening to today's episode of the Geeks Review, discussing Disney spin-offs, sequels, and all that stuff. We'll be back next week with a big discussion into movie musicals. Tune in for that. I'm Royce.
I'm Matt.
I'm Holly.
And I'm Aaron.
And we'll see you next time. Bye for now.